Hi, Jacob Field speaking. We've had a few issues this evening with audio-visual confirmation. If I could just get you to confirm that you can see and hear correctly, we'll get started in a few moments. Good evening, Jacob Field speaking from Ripe House. I do apologise about the delayed start and the technical issues. We've sort of been able to tie it all together, although things are not working as they should be, in getting things at least workable. So there is a link I've just posted on the chat bar on the right-hand side of the screen, which will watch or allow you to watch proceedings over on YouTube. And that has been confirmed. Thanks, John, Shane, Matt, that audio visual is okay on YouTube. So click on that link and jump over. We'll get started. I do apologise about the delay. Really exciting content to get through. It is a private webcast for Ripe House subscribers only. I have been promising a Geelong event for quite a while. In terms of, I can see a lot of you looking at Geelong and been very interested and consistently asking questions. So I've reached out to a Ripe House user who's someone I talk with very often and respect and look up to around how he approaches property, picked his brain and also brought him down here to the Ripe House office in cold Tasmania. And he's spending the night working with us and going through Geelong. So I'll do the quick intro in a moment. If you are having any issues, please let us know. Shane, I'll just put another note over with a link in the chat bar. And there will be a recording of this evening as well, of course, sent out for everybody. So look, let's just jump in. I'm waiting for responses back there on the right-hand side that, yes, Shane can hear fine. If you click on that link, we are running. I haven't moved the slide. So if you can see a smiling lady's face, then that is working. So Matt, thank you once again. Let's just click forward and let's jump in. Okay, So the topic of this evening is, of course, Geelong in Focus. I'll be describing tonight as a step-by-step masterclass with a local area expert. So what I mean by that is that we will be referring back to the Ripe House research and platform, how you can use the tools to drill down at each of the layers of our research. But then I'll be talking with Dave, our special guest, about what he has been seeing on his numerous trips down there as an investor and a local area expert. So he's been using the Ripe House software for almost 18 months. It really, in terms of leading and guiding what he is doing and how he is going about his research and acquisition, really taking the bull by its horns and going to Geelong many times. I think it's up to 10 times in the last few months, just researching and getting to know the area as a local. So that's why we've got him on the line tonight to pick his brain about what he's doing down there. So I do apologise once again for the troubles that we've had. So we're trying to regroup and get things organised. It's been a bit of a different format tonight. So a little bit about me, as a private webcast with subscribers, you are probably aware of where Ripe House has come from and what I've done. Been investing in property for about 15 years, currently own properties across the country. The Ripe House platform has been developed by myself and my team to really help me to begin with back in 2011, and then evolved into a platform to help other investors. So that's what it's all about. It's just about helping other like-minded investors to really thrive and grow. I like playing basketball and continue to do so even with sore knees and back and issues ongoing. But my next guest has taken another sport quite seriously as well. So a little bit about me, probably a lot more effectively than I have. So I'd love to introduce Dave Ward, who's someone who I really look up to and admire in property, and someone over the last 18 months that I've really got to pick his brain about how he goes about his investment journey. Actually owns a very large, substantial portfolio, been investing since a very young age, and he's guided a lot of the Ripe House research, development, the structuring of the software, what we look for, and how we actually categorise growth markets and what we do. So it's an amazing privilege to have Dave on the line tonight. And Dave's obviously had a pretty, I think going back to New South Wales level cricket in not the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So yeah, without further ado, it's great to welcome Dave Ward to us tonight. So thanks for coming down, Dave.
Look, yeah, really appreciate the invite, and it's yeah, really nice to be down in Tasmania, and of course nice to be discussing what I've been seeing on the ground in Geelong.
It's we've turned on a reasonable day for Dave today, and I think he has packed some shorts, you did mention. So we'll see how you go with those.
Yes.
But it's not too bad in terms of coming from Sydney. So thank you very much. And we are in the middle. So Dave has been flying as a base in Sydney down to Geelong. I mentioned the Geelong area in passing. You've been doing a lot of investment through Moreton Bay for the last few years. What am I seeing? Let's talk and compare notes around how Moreton Bay started life as a growth market. How can we draw similarities to Geelong or other areas at the time? That was when, Geelong was really standing out. That's when Dave started doing the research and trips down there. And as that's actually matured and consistently been appearing in our research reports, etc., some of the original markets that you did your due diligence in have sort of fallen off, or the reasons why the demand looked quite attractive. It didn't really suit itself to investment or investment grade property. So it's really changed the way that you've looked at the area. So it's going to be great to get those insights.
Sure. Yeah. Looking forward to going through the information, and hopefully can share some insights that help investors out there make some more informed decisions, and of course ultimately better returns.
Let's jump right in. I do apologise about the technical issues. So there is a link on the chat bar if you can click on that if you're having problems seeing, and obviously you can hear. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So It will be an interactive session as much as possible. We will be based on what's technical issues, etc. If you're happy, Dave, we can share details about how to get in contact with you directly in follow-ups, and if you want to channel them through me, in case you haven't been able to see or jump in when previously liked. But I do try and keep our webcast sessions as interactive as possible. So as promised, and as part of ongoing subscriptions, this is a regular private event set up to really give it a bit of a deeper level of understanding against the data and what we're seeing at a national level. So do ask questions, let's get involved. Let's just start out as much as we can. Please let us know how you're currently going about your investment life. So are you currently renting, potentially owner-occupier, with or without mortgage? I suppose a catchphrase at the moment is rent vesting. Are you looking to rent and then jump into investment properties, or getting that owner-occupier property started first? Let us know how many properties you've got, whereabouts they might be located, where you're calling from. Let me know and introduce yourself, and I will get the conversation going with everyone. Before that, while that comes through and you're all joining, we are obviously taking a deep dive of the Greater Geelong area, which is of course in Victoria, as a key satellite of the Melbourne, capital of Victoria, quite close in terms of commuting distance and times, probably even more accessible. It's more like a Wollongong, I suppose, for those people from Sydney, as opposed to a Newcastle, which is around the 2 hours. So it is quite accessible, and there has been a lot of very positive signs, which we'll go into in terms of on-the-ground data, research, and some expert assessments. So we will be going into what Dave is thinking is the optimum, or what you refer to it as the
just optimum from a strategy perspective down in the area, from what I've seen. As far as, as I said before, trying to get the best return possible from your investment dollars.
Let's just move things around a quick moment. I won't be a second. Okay. All right, so let's start at the top. Why Geelong? I'm going to now jump really quickly over to our Wipehouse software, and I'll give you a little bit of background about what I've been seeing and how we've got to this point. It might be actually a good point now. So Dave is someone who's contributed content regularly to the Frontier Investor, so you may have recognised his name. Over in the research tools, which is in the locate section of Wipehouse, we've actually been I've been working over the period of the last couple of months really trying to work out Dave's secret sauce, I suppose, in how you like to define a growth market and what you look for. Even going back to our conversations over the last 18 months, you've always had a very strong emphasis on looking for yields, strong yields, growing yields, and particularly yields at a high point in the cycle for that growth market. And that's really is now fallen down into the rules and the strategy which you can look at within the research tools.
Yes.
In Wipehouse. So there's a few ways that you can sort of get a little bit more of an understanding around how Dave goes about things. But Geelong really started standing out for me around Christmas time, where there was a lot of heat in the, particularly the Moreton Bay, but obviously Logan had a lot of heat for quite a while, into even the Gold Coast and Ipswich. There was a lot of eyeballs, lower sophisticated or lower involved investors across these areas, and you were sort of seeing the same things happening in Moreton, I suppose, Dave, with that heat and what it was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, Moreton Bay has been an interesting area the last couple of years. It started out a few years ago as an area that wasn't really on investors' radar, and when I kind of started to get involved with the Wipehouse platform and interact with Jacob, we had a lot of discussions around sort of my methodology and how I'd sort of pinpointed that specific area. And what we've in fact found is in the last 2 years, whilst going through and buying, the buying trends have changed fairly significantly. The price points of what the most in demand property types are has changed fairly significantly, and And Moreton Bay is now, in my view, on the ground, a market that we still think has a lot of upside potential. Still think it's really undervalued, but you have to be a lot more selective now in what you're choosing to buy in those markets, as opposed to 18 months ago, where there was a lot more opportunity for selection.
And the potential for upside as well. So it might just suit a more vanilla acquisition strategy in a mature growth market, potentially. Well, I suppose this sort of started the conversation to try and work out. We got to the point with Moreton where I started talking about it on webcasts towards the end of last year. And you've said, well, I've actually been investing there very heavily and using the Ripehouse software to invest there very heavily. But before that, and before you came to Ripehouse, you might be onto something here, and this is really suiting what I'm saying. So is there any other areas that are doing similar things?
Yes.
And that's why, well, look, I'm seeing in very similar alignment to Geelong. In Victoria, we've had conversations, a lot of the same metric assessments and research and alignment was happening down there, but at a time in the past compared to Moreton. And that's when you started jumping on planes to, in the same way, we had a webcast that we did in February. We're just looking today around the Moreton Bay area. In the same way, you'd already become a local area expert. You've now been really heavily involved in the Geelong research and area at a local street level. And what you're seeing is backing up things in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, the methodology that I've typically used and have always tried to use, and this is before Ripehouse made it much more easy and accessible to understand and find the information, was to get a statistical understanding of a market. And once the statistical analysis has been put together and indicates that the area might be an investment opportunity, then go down into the market itself to validate the data that's being shown from the statistical perspective of the analysis, to ensure that it is actually an investable area. And in the event, in the case of Geelong, it's taken probably about 3 months to get to the point now where we're really confident and really bullish on some certain segments within that market.
Yeah. I guess to start where we always do, state of the states, which really doesn't mean much. We've got Queensland in a state of slowdown as a state overall, which would be interesting to see how that, I'll have to dig into that. That's just really emerged very recently. At a state level, we've got conflicting stories overall at a state. Victoria is in the recovery and slowdown. It's actually regressed back using this mechanism and measurement in the last 6 weeks from 8, which it was in June, July, down to 7 again. That means that there's lots of large chunks of the Victorian market. You've got regional, you've got rural, you've got Melbourne inner, you've got Melbourne middle and outer. They're all might be moving in slightly different directions. So as an aggregate, we're looking at Victoria at 7 o'clock. Having said that, my assessments, drilling down to local government area level, we're seeing a lot of groupings where 500,000 or under has a lot of momentum and strength with indicators of growth, and not necessarily previous growth or growth happening right now. You've got a lot of Frankston, obviously Geelong, but then out into the Sunshine and eastern areas of Melbourne, all around that 500 or under price point, consistently looking very positive using the similar measures using Ripehouse. I'm just going to jump in really quickly to the Explore tool as the next port of call. So as a state, Victoria is in a reasonably good spot to purchase. As individual suburbs and LGAs, just using the normal mechanisms within the Explore page to try and uncover some Victorian suburbs. Okay, so we've got Frankston, which is scoring on a national level very strongly. It's in our top 5 LGAs in the country for investor interest. A lot of heat already developing and already obviously in Frankston. We've got a lot of Cranbourne, Coburg, Bendigo, and now we're seeing a lot of Geelong suburbs coming into the mix as boomerang suburbs. So what that means is we're beating the heat with investors in the market, but sentiment and the metric health is very strong. So all of the on-the-ground assessments of research using our data and the platform are showing very strong and positive things. Positive sentiment out there amongst researchers and experts and the media. Investors as a whole haven't caught on yet. Having said that, we do see quite strong investor interest in some of the key suburbs in Geelong already, and that's really where we're focusing on. In terms of how we've got to Geelong and not some of the other LGAs that you see here, we just see the volume and the on-the-ground story. So back in 6 months ago, when I sort of started speaking with Dave, there was half a dozen or so LGAs that were fitting the bill. This was one that checked out all the way through the due diligence, and it's now emerged very strongly. And if the data went in the opposite direction in those 6 months, it might have all been for nothing, and it sort of was for a few other LGAs. In terms of things have really strengthened with the data, the research, and then the on-the-ground validation has backed things up.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, I guess just from a big picture perspective, when the statistical analysis for Geelong reared its head up as a possibility for an investment location, and now having spent a bit of time in that market, what we've kind of found out is that what's really driving a lot of Geelong's popularity or momentum at the moment is the success of investors, or the investors' success in areas like Sydney and the Melbourne capitals, where over the last 2 or 3 years they've experienced excellent returns on their investment, and they're now looking to replicate those returns in other areas that they think are ready to move. And I think Geelong itself has a few things going for it. From a macro perspective, the price point is very, very affordable for a lot of the suburbs within Geelong. It's a very, very attractive area. For anyone that's ever been down to Geelong, it's pretty much positioned right on the waterfront, and there's some really what would be very expensive suburbs in Geelong that are very affordable based on where they're located and their proximity to the ocean and the sea. But as I said, very, very affordable, which makes it a really attractive sort of proposition. And the other thing is Geelong has it's very close proximity to an airport at Avalon, which is only around about a 15-minute drive from the CBD of Geelong. And the government has spent a lot of money from an infrastructure perspective on major upgrades to train lines to enable people the commute from Geelong on the train to be less than an hour now, from basically platform to the Melbourne CBD, whereas going back 10 years, it was probably more like an hour and a half, an hour and 3/4. So it's made it a very sort of accessible area now. And being around about 78 kilometres away from the Melbourne CBD, it's not such a long way away from the CBD itself.
Let's talk about probably commuting times. So this is one of the moments in terms of this is just clarification. So the data was looking very positive. Dave's on the ground. I've been having a chat with him about what's happening. Tell me about Geelong. We're seeing positive things over in Frankston, positive things out in Cranbourne, also up in Epping, which I sort of talked about last year. Dave sort of talked about what is on the ground in Geelong in terms of it being almost landlocked with the water, and proximity to the water is a very strong positive. Proximity to Avalon Airport and the train line is also big positives with upside. And then you've also got supply side risk and the potential for development infill inland in the northern precincts and even the eastern precinct as a risk factor in the Melbourne area. Having said that, those same factors, because of the land locking and proximity to water, mitigated a little bit in Geelong.
Look, Geelong from a supply perspective is an interesting proposition because the government's forecasting that the population of Geelong in the next 20 years is going to increase from its current level of about 250,000 people to nearly 400,000 people in the next 20 years. So what the Geelong government and the Geelong Council were really, really proactive in doing was being really strategic in planning for the future and planning for population growth and planning for businesses to really thrive down there. So from a supply perspective, there is the scope for supply in and around Geelong, some of the outer suburbs of Geelong, areas, new developments like Armstrong Creek and Warralilly. They over the next there's five major developments going on around Geelong at the moment. Over the next probably 15 years, there'll be roughly around about 15,000 houses that will be delivered into the market. But in saying that, all of the existing suburbs within Geelong at the moment, probably with the exception of one called Finesford, really don't have a lot of scope for a lot of supply to come into the market. So that, from an opportunity perspective, that was kind of the area that we sort of started to focus in and around was, the built up sort of existing suburban areas. And that's where we think some of the opportunities or the best opportunities in the market are positioned.
I guess as an investor, you've sort of done quite a few things going back in development through Campbelltown, commercial property in Parramatta, Moreton Bay, a lot of new builds, so single block type new builds, and it's more of an opportunist type strategy where to start with coming down here to Geelong, you were looking in, it was Belmont to begin with, wasn't it? And you were mentioning
Newtown, yeah.
And Newtown, that's where the numbers look the best. That was in our early February reports. You were sort of on the ground assessment saying that a lot of the positive demand signals were driven by owner-occupiers, not investment grade. Then the attention went over to, so up to $6 billion total infrastructure and project spend through this university upgrade and through Finesford developments, all through the supply that's entering the market through here. And then that was also then the next, well, maybe this might be an opportunity in terms of land.
Yes.
And then in terms, it's now come back where the data and the research has been aligning towards the middle to lower markets, and then as you've got to know the local government area more and more, you've realised it's coming back towards gentrification and potential for the type of jobs entering the market.
Absolutely. So just again from an on the ground observation, and I'm speaking to a lot of different sources to try and get as much crossover of opinion as possible to try and validate whether something that we were being told was, had validity or was correct. What the end sort of the end result has been from that process has been that there's, through the Geelong market, there's a fair few subtleties in the price points between the suburbs. So when you're talking about suburbs like Torquay and Barwon Heads, Newtown, and Belmont and suburbs of that nature, they're at the higher end of the price point within Geelong, and that's a very definitive market. And those markets have very few investors in them because the rental yields aren't so great, and owner occupiers are happy to live there because of the lifestyle opportunities that it presents people living in those suburbs. So what we started then to look at was the correlation between the opportunity with the lower price point or the lower end of the market and what's going on in the Geelong sort of Geelong region as such, from a job growth perspective, and also just again from an affordability perspective, and that's where we found the biggest opportunities in the market were, because a lot of the jobs, well, I'm sure this is a big key point, that a lot of people got turned away from Geelong probably in the last 18 months because there was a lot of negative press around the Ford and Alcoa plants shutting down, and around about 1,400 jobs were lost due to the closure of those two companies.
And that was all of the first questions all over the last year or so with people looking at Geelong through Ripehouse. So tell me, what about the Ford plant? That's national news. What's going on? And then you've sort of flipped it on your head with its the effect of gentrification.
Sure. So what, in fact, we've found and uncovered from our research is that there was around about 1,400 jobs lost, between those two companies or plants shutting down. But for every job that's been lost in the last 2 years, with relocation of other major national corporations, there's been roughly around about 10 jobs created for every job that was lost. So what initially seemed like it was going to be a negative thing for the regions, it ended up turning out to be a really positive thing from a job creation perspective. And of course, again, like in all of my experience from an investment perspective, the creation of jobs, I think, is the greatest driver of property growth over a long period of time.
Well, we had a bit of a chat about that today in terms of if there's a stagnant population without jobs, then the population might change. But then if people are then getting jobs, they're activated in the workforce, then they're spending, and then they're potentially attracting population, or there's a double whammy effect.
Absolutely.
And then activating the unemployment of an area. I think in terms of also the other conversations we've been having today in particular is the breadth of infrastructure improvements, which I think the compelling one is the opportunity for Avalon to go towards an international airport. And it's not the job growth is supported by improvements in public spaces, the university, hospital, etc.
And I think just from a macro perspective, the government has really gazetted Geelong as an area that they're focusing on with a lot of investment in infrastructure, because at the moment Geelong is the second biggest city in Melbourne. So basically, the government's now committed to spending all of this money there to create, again, the jobs, the transport, the lifestyle, the accessibility of the region for the growing population into the future, and of course the long-term benefit from that perspective is, of course, we believe going to be the growth of the property markets that are well located around those facilities.
This graphic here on the page is trying to lead us all through viewers through a process which I see as related. So gentrification occurring with the addition of jobs. That's then whenever a gentrification occurs, and me personally sort of investing in really low socioeconomic areas in regionals, in the public housing enclaves or lower socio parts, to try and get that uplift of organic growth in the LGA plus the gentrification on top of the norm might be a play here in terms of those lower to mid socio areas gentrifying to a larger degree, and that gentrification responsible for growth than the higher. I mean, that's a bit of common sense, but is that what you're seeing there on the ground?
Oh, look, that again, that's what we're seeing as the best opportunity in the market at the moment, because when you, as an investor, when you're buying property at a lower entry point, you naturally don't need as big a movement in the price to get a return on your money. And of course, with all of these other investments that are being made by governments and multinational corporations, the opportunity for the lower sort of socioeconomic lower end of the market is really, really high, in our opinion, to be sort of getting that uplift in value and pretty quickly as well. So that's kind of what we're sort of experiencing and seeing on the ground, and that's where we think the opportunities are.
That probably moves into this final point on this slide of when I say low margins, I mean the margin for error is lower when the price point is lower. So you've got a lot of fixed costs. You might not have as much upside for renovation, even development. So your margin for error sometimes can be higher. So that's what you as an investor, Dave, I suppose, and that's what it all comes down to tonight, is trying to get inside your head to work out how you've tried to mitigate that risk and achieve where you've identified it was a completely different play in Moreton in terms of
Yes.
it was the mid to upper point of Moreton to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the market up there, on your on-the-ground assessments come down through gentrification, job growth, lower price point providing the opportunity. That has been what I've seen with the data. So going back to the beginning of the year, it was Newtown, Belmont, into Hamlin Heights, Manifold Heights. I've had numerous webcasts into now Norlane, Geelong West, Corio, lower price point areas that have now got the alignment with have been waiting in the wings and then strengthened. So that is sort of, it's a consistent story with what you're seeing, the strategy and the logic then being backed up with the research on a monthly level. Having said that, lower margin environment, a little bit more room for less room to move. So that's what I really wanted to try and get inside Dave's head now, into how he's mitigated that risk and why it's sort of acquired the time on the ground. So this is what we're really waiting for. Let's just take a bit of a high level sort of talk through some of their geography. So we've seen some pretty good scores through Geelong West of recent times, Manifold Heights, north into Norlane and into Corio. That is around where the Ford plant has closed. You've got a lot of low socioeconomic areas. You've got quite a strong tie to the train line on either side. Just a few points just to touch on. There are some strong pockets of public housing. Using the Ripe House tools, there are some defined sweet spots in and around the shopping and commuter hub, so the Princes Highway, not the main M1. And then there is some supply side risk over here emerging into the market. So through the Quarry area and Finesford. So there is a bit of terrain. Anything you can think to add with what you've seen on the ground? In terms of no-go zones or what?
Oh, look, as far as no-go zones are concerned, what you have to be really particular about if you're going to target these lower socioeconomic areas is the types of dwellings there are in a particular location and what the local sentiment is towards particular streets in those suburbs. So public housing certainly does play a part in being very wary if you're going to go for if we're investing in these lower price pointed areas. So that's one thing to be really aware of, and I guess there are pockets that certainly have very high density of public housing around, and some of those properties. If we look at some of those properties, they're not the most attractive properties in the market, and from the perspective of potential upside into the future, we just have to be really wary of anything that's, as I said, in a really highly concentrated pocket of public housing.
Also, subtleties around stigma attached to one thing. We've sort of had a bit of a debrief on this localized stigma around, even outside of public housing, but sides of a suburb or blocks that locals, and they're obviously tenanting properties that are potentially being owned by investors that would stay away from, and substandard performance sort of on the back of that. Is that something you're sort of seeing?
Oh, look, I mean, there certainly are. Again, the opportunity to add value to certain properties has to be really analysed and understood from the perspective of planning risk. But there are certainly some blocks of land that we're seeing that may in a general market be really suitable investments, but in some instances in these markets here they're not particularly as easy as what they appear to be, from an adding value perspective. So you have to be really aware of really aware of the planning the planning code around the properties that are on the market at the moment.
So I guess if we are seeing a lower socio area with gentrification occurring at a LGA, and the lower areas sort of sucked up because of the employment and government-led spend, it's on the back of jobs. So that demand has been led by people with jobs demanding a good standard of property. So the margins are tight. I'm just sort of going back and forth here, but this is sort of getting to what you've been seeing on the ground in terms of margins are tight. You can get the street level wrong, and it affects the deal fundamentally. With you having to go back 10 times or whatever it's been,
yes,
it's all coming down to relationships. So this is what I really wanted to talk to, what you've been seeing, but then also this is the level of under the data that we need to sort of get to, and what the benefit of some of the, how you've been forming relationships and what you've been doing, and how that's helped. So would you agree, it's coming down to the relationships on the market there and how that's helped?
Oh, very much. Look, I mean, the relationships that we've managed to build in the last 3 or 4 months have been really invaluable to being able to put deals together. And that sort of, ranges from real estate agents, town planners, architects, builders, engineers, and the general various consultants around the place to get a really deep understanding of exactly what the costs are and what the limitations are of particular blocks that you might be looking at. So those relationships, like everything, I suppose, in life, they really are very important when you're on the ground, and when you're face to face with people, you get to find out a lot of information that you would never have been able to find out otherwise, doing the analysis on your computer.
Yeah, and I guess I sort of know this down here in Hobart, but
yeah, absolutely. Look, there's from the other big upside to being on the ground is the off-market deals that we've been able to tap into effectively. These are sort of opportunities that get presented to us that aren't on the market or don't hit the market, and we've managed to buy a couple in that sort of vein. So that has been a really valuable experience, again, going down and forming these relationships with agents that are able to present these opportunities to us in the suburbs that we're happy to purchase in.
And I guess, this is not rocket science either in terms of, the data is pointing very strongly towards Geelong, and on a national level, our eyes have drawn towards it. I'm just trying to answer questions, a lot of them coming through in terms of the wheres and the hows over the last few weeks. That's where it is coming down to. I'm just trying to summarise now to the mid to lower end of the market, and the opportunity does exist there to understand the street level dynamic, the Ripe House sweet spots, public housing, those streets with stigma attached to it, those streets that are turning over, or the likelihood of being tenanted to good job growth. So just taking the time to understand that local dynamic and really appreciating the value when the margins are lower. And then off market, you did sort of mention some of it might be worth in chat or having a conversation around some of the types of agents and builders, etc., which other relationships. But I'll just flick through this quickly because I wanted to really sort of detail a recent project that you've just done or doing, Dave, in terms of what is possible in the market and what you've sort of been able to achieve. Because Geelong coming into it, mid 250s to 300 to 350 is the sort of the price point. Generally renovation, generally the yields. We're not talking Claremont or Glenorchy or Northern Hobart yields. We're not talking Bendigo or Albury yields. We're not talking Logan yields in a lot of cases. We are talking satellite city yields. So if you're thinking more around Wollongong, even up into Newcastle, 4.5% to 6% max. And that's what we're seeing in Geelong. Dave sort of doesn't really settle for that. So, yeah, these are some of the reasons. So it's necessary. Dave's obviously quite sophisticated. He's taking the time to form relationships and to go to that extra level on the data and the research to get some of these upsides, which you're probably better at talking through.
Sure. Look, just as a case study, if we like, of the deal that's put together. So the land was purchased for $230,000. And we're talking about a 9-month total time horizon to complete the project. So in an existing suburb. So basically, the things that needed to be understood before the deal was taken on were elements such as the design of the dwellings that were required for the market that was going to cater to the specific market that we bought the property in. The cost of building the dwellings, the dwelling types, whether they were 2 or 3 or 4 bedroom dwellings, and what was again going to be the best value from an investment perspective. The level of finish of the properties was another big piece of the puzzle that took quite a while to really understand, because what our initial perception of it was didn't end up being what the market is demanding.
And that's probably not pulling any punches. Probably not. You're not overcapitalising on fit out.
No, because at that end of the market, there's no return on the additional money that you might spend on a property to put to the market. So I have to be really aware of that, because again, as Jacob kind of mentioned earlier, the margins for these types of investment opportunities aren't absolutely enormous, but so the margin for error in getting it wrong is really quite small. And if you do get it wrong, then the chances are you could end up with a property that you've paid a little bit too much money for, and of course you're then going to have to wait a reasonable period of time to kind of recoup your money, if you like,
or renovate your way out of it.
Correct.
Potentially.
Correct.
I mean, this deal you're sort of taking me through today, though, that's what I want to sort of really try and talk through is it's a subdivision, small block subdivision, 230K purchase price, so it's just your run-of-your-mill stuff, 36.7% first or cash-on-cash return.
Yes.
So this is the stuff I sort of like to see in terms of we've come into these markets. This is how to make the absolute most of it from someone who's had the experience doing a lot of different things and has worked out this is the best way for this market, and then bolstered up. So we're sort of talking low 5s, 5-ish yields up to around 6% yields at completion, and then with the added depreciation benefits that wouldn't have or otherwise existed, because we're dealing with a lot of older stock.
Yes.
Through low socio. I think that's a pretty good snapshot of.
It's a very good overall snapshot. I mean, really, from an investment perspective, I mean, the most attractive things for me were the fact that in such a short period of time, with what I saw as once the research had been completed, what I saw as a very limited downside risk. You were able to nearly achieve a 40% return, cash-on-cash return in a 9-month period on your money, and then go from what was yielding around about 5.1% to what ended up being 6% at completion. And of course, you then got the benefits of the depreciation and the tax benefits at completion as well. So that to me, from an investment perspective, again, long term in the Geelong market, more than happy to hold on to the property long term and not subdivide and sell just to try and cash in on the profit. So more than happy to hold on to it down there, and that's what we sort of saw as the gap in the market or the opportunity.
It did go from infill in mid to high into
Mm.
single block from good subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just talking through with Dave as I'm interested to know. And this gets fed. So a lot of you have been talking to me about Geelong, and I've been feeding this down through the chain in conversation with what Dave's been seeing, etc. But then it's really just keeps getting back to this. You're absolutely maximising returns, not necessarily going through lower to mid areas and just buying to hold or then buying to renovate. But it's really these plays with the subdivision, the larger blocks that potentially. That's where it is at. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, I mean, I suppose every suburb has to be analysed on the data available and the facts that you uncover as an investor along the way, and that's why it's kind of taken so long to get to this point, because it started off as, okay, I'm not sure what the strategy is, and now after digging around for the last few months, it got to the point where we think this is the best opportunity in the market.
Yeah, I do apologise we've sort of had to regroup and get through things a little bit quick tonight. I do apologise because we've sort of missed out on the opportunity we have got a few questions coming through. I'm not sure if that is functioning. I don't want to miss out on anything. I have pre-arranged this with Dave for him to open up his time, probably not tomorrow. We'll be still down here in Tassie, so there's a bit of a time lag of a few years. After you get settled in, are you back to Sydney on Wednesday?
Yeah.
You'll very generously open your time up to work with or give you just descriptions and take people through some of the projects that you've been doing, just to get an idea of what can be done in the market. Mm-hmm. And open up that line for Ripe House subscribers just to have a conversation with someone with that understanding of what's going on down there, just to give a different perspective. So we can hold things here for Q&A. I'll put things on mute for a few moments. I am aware of Dave's time and trying to wrap up by 9. So I do apologise for the late start and having to sort of get through things quite quickly. It's not to say that we're going to miss out on getting into any questions. I can hang around here and answer chats. Dave's got his mobile number there, 0425 559 648, to contact Dave directly if you've got any questions. If you want to talk with me about the research, what you're seeing, if you'd like me to forward anything on to Dave, if you'd like me to act in between or get you guys in contact, hit me an email at jacob.field@ripehouse.com.au. For those who don't want to stick around for Q&A, this is where all the magic happens in Q&A potentially with, we're trying to predict what questions you guys are going to be asking and putting the content together, but, we can really get down to it. If you don't want to stick around, thank you so much for attending. Thank you for joining us tonight, Dave, and I apologise about the late start and the weather.
Look, really, it's great to be down here, and really do appreciate being invited along, and hopefully have added some insights that people can take away and of course, invest profitably for.
I think to summarise, what the real takeaways is middle to lower, and there's some nice opportunities to really
add value.
Leverage and work in the market with what it's presenting. The best opportunities is to do that. So that's a lot of insight for the less data, less research, more of the absolute opportunity from an expert and someone who understands how to analyse this opportunity. So it's really beneficial. So let's put things on mute, and we'll be back in a few moments. Just gather up questions, and we will go from there. Okay, so there have been a couple of questions that have come through to me via email. We are having problems with the chat mechanism on the page, so I do apologise. We are, I'm trying to make myself available via live chat and email. Dave's obviously got his mobile number there. One question that has come through from Scott is around, look, can you just talk through the suburbs? What I have seen, there are a number of suburbs that are featured at the moment in boomerangs and or recently in Karaya. There's a lot of crossover with the suburbs that Dave is looking and really liking. So Dave's probably the best one to answer.
Look, suburbs of interest, Geelong West. That's an interesting suburb with a few opportunities. I think
it's a little bit closer to CBD.
Yeah, it is a little bit closer to CBD. Hamlin Heights. Also, another market that presenting some pretty reasonable opportunities. Got Corio, again lower socioeconomic area, Nor Lane, and Manifold. They're really the sort of the key sort of areas that have been focusing on.
Manifold Heights is one that actually quite a few Ripehouse users have been coming in there doing renovate for profit. So there was a 2 or 3 month period where Ripehouse users who had a really strong bias towards renovate for profit, that come down to a really sweet spot. I don't really like overusing that word, across the country for renovate for profit upside. So it was sort of 350, 400, and there was precedent in market for 600 plus similar renovations, a lot of owner occupier gentrification happening through there. Just a bit of perspective, you've got Newtown is a very strong and when I say strong, higher price point, very strong school zone, public schools, etc. 650 plus. You go down out from that towards Belmont's on the other direction, into Manifold, Hamlin Heights. You're going out into older established properties.
Sure.
And there was patches in there that needed renovation for profit. It's a lot driven by owner occupiers, so it was more of a flip strategy and to sell back into market from what I could see. And that was out without being on the ground.
That's precisely the sort of opportunities that were presented there. There was probably a wave of renovators that went through a lot of those suburbs 18 months ago, and really pushed the median price. Like those suburbs, if you look at them from a median price perspective over the last 2 years, they've done really, really well. But a lot of that was on the back of manufactured capital growth, if you like, where investors were buying in it really, really what today is a cheap price, and of course then flipping them and selling them for pretty decent returns in time frames of between 8 and 12 months.
Yep. We've got another question around the Ford plant and some of how that may have changed residents and what they're doing there. Not answering the question directly there from Susan, but it's just around a bit of a takeaway that you mentioned around the mayor, and there was a strong undertaking from him and his perspective on gentrification.
So basically, Ford shut down after a really long period of time in the area, and it was kind of it was predominantly a very blue collar area, Geelong, and who is now the ex-mayor, Darren Lyon, who was removed from being the mayor probably around about 3 months ago now. He single-handedly pretty much tried to change the whole perception of Geelong, and the way that people thought about Geelong as a manufacturing sort of city, and against a lot of I guess popular opinion, made some really hard calls for the area. But what's ended up happening is it's really benefited the area, and for the long term, I think it's some of the best things that could have happened for the area, for its long-term economic prosperity.
Yeah, and I suppose when you can, the money being spent down there, without getting off topic again, which we could have covered, university upgrades to the medical department.
So yeah, there's been some really major projects that are undergoing under construction at the moment and have just been recently completed. It's in the realm of around about $6 billion worth of projects in total. So yeah, Deakin University is undergoing a really large expansion at the moment because of the proposed influx of students that they're anticipating over the next 20 years. That's one of, as I said, one of probably about 24 major projects. But the other major projects were the connection of the old Country Link rail line to the CBD rail link into the Melbourne CBD. There was about $5 billion spent on that, and it's kind of reduced train times or commute times down to around about 55 minutes to get from Geelong to the CBD. So that's a really positive thing. And just again, generally the Geelong Ring Road, there's been a few $1 billion spent on the completion of that Geelong Ring Road, which basically makes Geelong really accessible from a train perspective, from a car perspective, and the other big one is the Avalon Airport, which is only around about 12 or 13 kilometres away from the Geelong CBD. That airport over the next 10 years is going to start taking international flights from places like Indonesia and China. So those things there are a really major, I think, a major contributor to the future of the area and its economic vibrancy.
There's been a few specific questions coming through which might be worth taking offline. I'm just aware of time. So if you've got any more sort of general questions around makeup and what's sort of happening on the job or development front, flick them through. We are going to get to each question individually. I think it might be worthwhile just taking individual questions offline that we can pick them based on. I'm not sure if this is a total sample, and there may. I'm just not confident that I'm missing out on any sort of balls here. So look, let's leave them there. I am aware of time, and yeah, if you've got any questions, flick them through. Dave's happy to have a chat. 0425 559 648. If you feel more comfortable, you would like me to be engage in the conversation as a Ripehouse subscriber, I'm always happy to contribute and help use the software and research via jacob.field@ripehouse.com.au, and then I can get Dave into the mix. And that's probably the best way to take and talk through some of the more specific case studies, which is that when I say that, more to what you guys are trying to do with the software, and then also apply what Dave knows. So it might be better to take that offline and actually work through some case studies. If you're happy to do that, Dave.
Yeah, more than happy.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, let's leave it there, and let's keep the conversation going. I really appreciate your time, and thanks again, Dave, for coming down.
Well, look, appreciate people coming to tune in. So, and yeah, thanks to Jacob for inviting me.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.